Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Cloud Currents podcast, where we explore strategies and technologies shaping the future of cloud computing and cybersecurity. I'm your host, Matt Pacheco, and I help businesses understand cloud trends to better help them make decisions about their IT strategy. In today's episode, we'll be diving into evolving cybersecurity landscape, how organizations can effectively secure their cloud environments amidst an onslaught of modern threats like ransomware. We're joined by Josh Davies, a seasoned cybersecurity professional and principal product marketing manager at Fortra, a leading provider of managed detection and response solutions. Josh has been on the front lines working as a security analyst and solution architect before transitioning into his current role, driving Fortra's technical marketing strategy. He brings a wealth of hands-on experience across domains like threat detection, incident response, cloud security, and more. In our discussion today, we'll explore topics like bridging the cybersecurity skills gap through managed services, the latest ransomware tactics and the SOC's role in combating them, securing hybrid cloud workloads, and the convergence towards extended detection and response, XDR platforms. Thanks for joining us today, Josh.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me, and thanks for that intro. You did me justice, absolutely.
We try. Well, we appreciate you being on here. We could just kick this off right here by, can you walk us through your career journey into cybersecurity?
Yeah, sure. So I think to start like at the very beginning, I had a bit of an unorthodox journey into cybersecurity, and I would encourage anybody listening who thinks maybe it's not for them that actually there are a lot of different backgrounds that can get into cybersecurity. So I was in law initially, and I kind of became a bit disillusioned with that pathway. I loved the grey areas of the law, and turns out there aren't that many of them these days with hundreds of years of case law and kind of well thought out statutes and legislation. But cybersecurity was something I touched on a little bit as I was doing a lot of international law pieces, and I found that really interesting, that the challenge of attribution, right? We know someone's done something illegal, but we can almost never pin it on them. And so that was the kind of grey stuff that I loved, and I found myself getting more familiar with cybersecurity. Ended up getting my first cybersecurity role as a security analyst, thanks to a friend who was already in the industry and kind of helped coach me a little bit. I spent a little time there doing incident response tasks, kind of being terrified every day initially that I was going to miss an active attack and be the cause of a breach. And as I grew into it, started to get a lot more confident doing things like threat hunting exercises, tuning, tweaking and modifying the detections that we could catch the things that we needed to catch. Before moving on to more of the darker side, where I did some of my solutions architect work into the marketing space, as well as some sales too. So I've kind of been on the ground, understanding what it's like to be a foot soldier. And then it comes to cybersecurity, seeing active attacks on a regular basis. I mean, it was literally every half an hour there was a new compromise to try and deal with, working for a managed service provider, which was awesome. And then to actually help businesses try and solve their security challenges, to hear what IT teams are struggling with, how they can build security into them, trying to work out, hey, where are you at in your security journey? Are you really immature? You're just starting out? Are you quite mature? And how can we keep pushing you down that? Because security is a journey that never has an end destination. It's endless. And so wherever you are on that, there's still a distance to go forward.
How has your roles in security and analysis and solution engineering informed your current responsibilities at Fortra?
Yeah, so as the title says, I got that technical thrown in for the technical product marketing manager, and that's really my strength. I didn't know about marketing initially. I've built it up over the years, but I knew all about the technical pieces, and I support a lot of existing marketing initiatives, making sure that the language is accurate as it needs to be and responsible. I really don't like when people use the overstate their capabilities, right? Like I've seen eliminate risk over the years. I've seen we stop threats, and there's some truth in those, but those are kind of absolutist statements are never quite true, right? Because the attacks, even if you're able to confidently block 100% of attacks right now, tomorrow you can't possibly say that. You can't anticipate the threats of tomorrow, which is also why I love the industry, because it's always having to be reactive to a certain degree. The attackers always get the first move, so they get a bit of an advantage there, and we have to react, and we have to adapt to the evolving threat landscape with our security controls, detections, or strategies, and quickly things that used to be maybe established, principles carry on, but I remember as a junior analyst having some of the veterans come up to me and ask, hey, what do you think of this? And I kind of felt completely out of my depth. And I was like, are you testing me? No, we genuinely want to know what you think of this, because this is absolutely new to us as well. And you're going to have a different perspective that's going to help us understand what's going on here. So yeah, hopefully that answers the question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting career progression too. As a fellow marketer, awesome.
Come the other way, haven't I? Not that. Maybe it's the law practice I had that I've always been able to. I had a bit of the gift of the gab. Maybe I wasn't the best technically as an analyst, but it's a really collaborative role. I work with a lot of great people, and I get to share my own experiences, but also their experiences. I love staying abreast of all my colleagues or now friends in different places as well as to what the latest security developments are, because it's a really collaborative community, as it has to be, right? We all face the same common enemy.
Excellent. And I'll say for the audience, he's really good on a webinar too. I've seen a few of your recent webinars talking about ransomware and some of your products, and you're doing a good job marketing. So glad to have you on the show and hear about your background and how you got to where you are today. It's awesome. So you're probably familiar with a lot of the trends going on in cybersecurity, and I'd like to get into a few of them. The first of which being the skills gap in cybersecurity. We know a lot of businesses are facing challenges when it comes to that. And what are the biggest challenges companies face in hiring and retaining cybersecurity talent?
Sure. So, I think I'm probably the product of the skills gap, the fact that they had to take chances on people without the kind of formal education, went to uni and studied computing or something. So yeah, in that respect, people do have to think outside the box sometimes when they're hiring. If you can kind of get somebody who might not have all the credentials, all the pieces that you want right there, but you have an environment where you can develop them, that's the best way to go. Because I think good analysts thrive on development, self-development. The only way, the number one skill for an analyst is having that ability to learn quickly and the desire to learn. Because if you stagnate, then as we discuss, things move on and you're no longer going to be as effective. But the challenge there is when you've got somebody who always wants to move on to the next challenge, you're kind of caught with this, hey, I want them to stay doing the thing that they do so well that I need somebody to be doing for me day in, day out as a security task. But if I keep them there, if I don't challenge them, move them forward, then they're going to look elsewhere because there are so many other opportunities out there. So, I think that's the big thing. Hiring is one thing, but then retaining, training, making sure you're investing in people, and then also there's that big gap when they are trying to train them up. There's usually about 6 months to get an analyst up to speed on your processes and how you do things. So it's really hard to anticipate this. Like, we need a 24/7 team, but it's hard to anticipate when we're going to have a few people leave us. They might all leave at once. So my top tip for anyone who's looking at kind of hiring security talent, and I encourage you to hire security and talent internally, but I'd also encourage you to augment that security team with managed services. Somebody who you can trust with doing the daily security tasks, the kind of bread and butter, if that phrase scales over to the States, but the standard things that everyone needs to do every day. So that means that's been taken care of. Somebody is reviewing every single alert that is spat out by the SIEM or XDR tool that's creating detections. And people internally are ready when they need to be ready, when it does hit the fan, when there is a critical incident and everyone needs to go into kind of forming war rooms and doing full incident response capabilities. But it means they're not having to do mundane tasks every day when nothing is going on, and they can focus on more high value, niche, bespoke tasks that are more specific to your organization. Things like custom threat landscape reviews, things like looking at all of your tech and saying, how can we evolve our security maturity? How can we harden what we've got so far, or implement things like zero trust to kind of make sure we have a better security posture? So I think that's my top tip. Make a combination of both is the best security programs, and we see that across the board, whether you're a really small organization or whether you're kind of large enterprises. Everyone is looking for that augmentation, that partnership to get the most out of their security program.
Excellent. That gets into my next question, because I was going to ask why are so many companies moving to managed security services, like a managed partner?
It's a good question, because I think I used to have the conversation with people when I was doing the solutions architect piece of, they wanted to do it themselves. They wanted to buy a SIEM tool and create their own security program and hire a full troop of staff. And we'd have to educate as to, hey, okay, I get the appeal of that, and you want to have full control over it, but you realize how difficult that is, how expensive it's going to end up being, and all those challenges we mentioned with the skills gap and kind of keeping and maintaining analysts. It's tricky. And even if you think you've kind of got it nailed down, do you really know that your security program is as effective as it could be? So I think now we've seen that shift, that people aren't asking, should I do it myself or should I manage? I know I need managed help. And now I just need to know who is the best person to manage myself, my team, or not manage, but support myself, my team, my technology stack. Who's got the right threat intelligence, the deep analytics they're going to pick out, and then also the right people who I can rely on, who I can work with on a daily basis. So I think that's why we've seen that. We've seen a lot of people move into the MDR, managed detection and response space, or any managed services space. Over the last 5 years, there's been a rapid acceleration from technology vendors, but particularly EDR, endpoint detection response vendors, adding a managed wrap and starting to build out more capabilities. And Fortra or Fortress Alert Logic MDR has been delivering MDR for 20 plus years. So kind of we were one of the old heads here, the kind of veterans that were being emulated a lot of the capabilities that we had, how in things like cloud, in things like a server, threat detection and response. But competition's healthy. I think it's great that there are so many people in this space right now. It means there's more options, but means that everyone is kind of pushing each other forward to develop the better capabilities or deeper analytics, and not just tick box coverage, which is what I see a lot of people doing who don't quite get it. They think, I can cover a certain type of threat. Yeah, but what about evasions? Yeah, so that's why I think it's great that we're all kind of in this. It's a busy space. It's a great space to be in, managed security.
Well, it's probably a good thing that it's busy, because the threats that everyone's protecting against are growing as well. So having those experts augment businesses, that's a good thing. And then the competition is healthy too, which kind of leads to my next group of questions for you on another trend, ransomware. We all hear about it all the time, or it's in the news. There's huge ransomware trends. We're seeing the numbers that came out of 2023, and very scary, very scary for businesses. How have ransomware tactics evolved recently with trends like data exfiltration?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think I'm going to start by outing myself a little bit, because at one point, I can't remember, a number of years ago, I said, I think ransomware is going to die down. I think we've had enough of it. We know about the encryption payloads and the attack sequence that take to get there. I was wrong. It didn't die down. But the reason it didn't die down is because the kind of definition of ransomware was extended so much as they developed these new techniques, double, triple extortion, which we really go into is how that evolved. So it used to be just getting in the network, getting hold of as many machines as possible, and then deploying a payload that will encrypt all the machines. So basically makes them useless, bricks them so nobody can actually get on, do their work. You think back to the old breaches, things like Travelex, the money exchange. They had to go on pen and paper to exchange money while they were getting the systems back online. But that was about the full scale of the impact. It was taking you offline. You have to you take a while to build back up. You might pay the ransom, you might not. What we've seen is this increasing sophistication or increasing volume of ransomware actors or ransomware families, and that's because people did pay the ransom, or they did manage to monetize their access. Right? This is a successful business plan. If somebody gives you a couple of million in Bitcoin, you want to reinvest a portion of that to make yourself better. And so what we've seen is real specialization of these ransomware actors. Ransomware as a service has been around for a while, but their sophistication, like Lockbit, they will market. They write their own marketing pieces of how quick they can encrypt your devices, because your time is of the essence. The quicker you can do something, the less time we as defenders have to react and disrupt and contain it. So there's that sophistication. They work very much like in the Conti ransomware group that had their chat logs released. The Conti ransomware group were one of the biggest, really active about 2 years ago. And they, at the beginning of the kind of Russia-Ukraine conflict, some of their members were Ukraine. They had quite a big operation. They'd hired people, and some of the disgruntled Ukrainians, after Conti declared their support for Russia, released lots of chat logs, which chat logs don't sound too interesting, but actually you got to see the inner workings of how sophisticated this operation was. The fact that they were interviewing people, albeit with cameras off, but they were interviewing with people, and some people were working kind of HR functions. They were holiday was requested by the malware developers, and then HR would deal with it. They did have a high staff turnover. A lot of them kind of realized something was up and maybe thought getting paid in cryptocurrency isn't quite the norm. But that just shows the level of sophistication they're able to get to. And now we're in this point where you've got all these ransomware as a service families who just specialize on building the ransomware software, malware. So that now enables them to do data exfiltration really well. They can actually go and search and find sensitive data, so whether that's keyword searches, that if you plug your memory stick in and you happen to have a file on there that's called passport, they will know that that happens. It'll pull it straight off, and then they'll go and store it and eventually take it offline. Then what they'll then do is sell it on the dark web or threaten to do so first. So you pay the ransom. That's the second extortion of the double extortion. And if you pay it, they're supposed to give it back. But honor amongst thieves, they're probably going to still sell it because someone will use that to scam you, or someone will use that to try and hack into your own personal accounts. We've also seen the triple extortion, which is like the saying, I'm going to go to the ICO, so the data protection authorities, and say, we have this data. They haven't reported it to you yet, so you should fine them for it, because you're supposed to declare within 72 hours of knowing about a data breach. So and then there's even quad extortions, which I've seen some people talk about, where they just DDoS. So DDoS is distributed denial of service. They basically spam your servers to make it really hard for you to actually do anything, because they get overwhelmed, they fall over. So there's up to 4 extortions now, which if we evolve from that single one of just encrypting stuff to the potentially the full 4. So that's how it's evolved. That's why ransomware hasn't gone away. And because they're specializing in building the ransomware pieces, they don't have to worry about being good at gaining entry. They don't have to focus on social engineering or web exploits that gain you initial access into a network. They don't even have to do a lateral movement technique. Some of them just give you the final end product. Because in order to do a ransomware attack, you have to gain access. You have to see where you are, see what you can get hold of, start to grab user credentials that have got high levels of privileges, or find another way to move laterally amongst the network. Find the data sources that are sensitive for you to take. Find enough machines that if you do encrypt it, it's not just 3 machines we've got to redo. It's every single. It's 99% of our estate. So now they're partnering instead with people who are good at initial access. People who maybe they're insiders, or maybe they're social engineer specialists. They're good at ChatGPT and using spear phishing attacks. Loads of different ways that people can get in. They then come to you and say, hey, I've got access to so-and-so's organization. Do you want to go half on the ransom with us? And you give us the kind of specialist ransomware malware. They say yes, and there you go. So this is why it's everyone's problem. If one organization gets compromised and they monetize it, they get more sophisticated and they come for you the next day, which is why I think fostering collaboration among security professionals, threat intelligence, and non-security professionals, just talking about security all the time, no matter who you are, exec down to someone who has barely touched the computer apart from to look at their emails, is really, really important, because this is a global collective issue.
Wow. Now that you scared everyone listening, what are some key opportunities for defenders within businesses to kind of disrupt these attack sequences?
When I talked about the attack sequences that happen, and probably the webinar you attended might have been the ransomware attack sequences, because I often hear people say, I want to defend against ransomware, and that's like defending against the final action. It's like saying, I'm scared of dying at old age, and you're currently 25. There are a lot of steps in between to get to that last bit. So what are the steps? Maybe that example isn't great, but what are the steps for you to get to that end point where it is you are fearful of? And you can do things like threat modeling to understand, okay, if getting hold of enough of our machines and getting hold of sensitive data, the things we're trying to stop those ransomware actors do, let's work backwards as to how they would actually get there. What are the entry points? How would they move amongst our network in order to get there? And which is great for us as defenders, right? There are a lot of opportunities for us to actually catch earlier signs so early I couldn't even tell you it was a ransomware attack, because I don't know what their end objectives are. It's hard to always know what they're going for, particularly especially if you catch it at the first instance, and actually disrupt that attack, contain it, so you buy yourself a little bit more time, conduct full investigation in order to determine, okay, how did they get there? What alerts have I got, but also what alerts do I not have? What stuff might be missed by my security controls, my preventive controls, my detections? Because technology is great, but even with all the AI pieces we have, it still misses stuff, and we still need to fill in the gaps as security analysts. So things like threat hunting, manual investigations are really important. And it means then I can be confident, okay, I've identified attack, I've got the full scope of it, I've seen how far they've progressed. They didn't get to the end goal, which is great, and we've managed to contain them. Now let's work backwards. How did they get there? How did they do each of the steps? So when I'm advising or deploying remediation pieces, I know that I'm getting the full compromise and not just addressing a symptom. So an analogy I like to use there is, if I have a headache, right, you give me a paracetamol, I might not have a headache, but what if I have COVID-19 or a brain tumor in there? You haven't treated the underlying cause. So that's why it's really important that we holistically analyze all the data that we have, all the different pieces of our environment, because you might not realize how interconnected these are. Attackers gain access to one machine and they instantly pivot off to another one. You might have great security controls on certain assets which you think are security relevant. You might not think about some of them which actually offer legitimate avenues into those critical assets as being that important. So you put them outside of your scope for your monitoring, outside of scope for things like MFA. I still see that all the time, that people are like, oh, it's too hard, we had legacy systems, we couldn't put it on there, we recognize it was a risk. But hey, every asset needs to be covered. Every asset needs to have visibility into it, because when I come to doing my investigations, I need to have all the pieces of the puzzle to be able to put up that full picture. And there's been a lot of challenges in the industry with tools that don't address just portions of security. There are so many new security challenges every year. A new vendor steps up with a perfect solution for that specific challenge. The challenge might not be as relevant in a few years' time, or you might still have those relevant challenges, but you've got 10 different tools doing 10 different things for you, and you've got 5 security analysts who can't make sense of all how these data all links up together, because it's all in different format or different consoles or whatever. So going back to that skills shortage point and the need for visibility and coverage everywhere, we need to make sure that we do more with the analysts and the resources that we do have. And part of that is by empowering them with the right tools that make things easy, that use automation when automation is going to make my life easier, that have visibility, that I don't have to waste time doing things that are going to slow me down. I can just focus on the actual high value tasks that I'm here to do as a security professional.
Excellent. And my next question is about the tools. So using security operations centers and MDR, how can you use those tools to faster detect and respond to threats like ransomware?
Yeah, sure. So I think you asked about tools first. You asked about MDR. So I'm going to start with the tools piece, and then we'll go on to the kind of people and process that the managed bit brings. So there are a lot of tools out there for security monitoring, and there are a lot of tools out there for kind of blocking things as well. And depending on where you are in your security journey, obviously blocking threats is the first thing you should be doing. The most obvious threats can be blocked and will be blocked by even antivirus, but encourage EDR, things like firewalls, tune up your policies. But understanding that you can't block every threat, because if you tried to, you'd block all your legitimate users and you'd have everyone really annoyed at the IT or security team that they can't do their daily tasks, and that affects the bottom line. Then you have to be able to detect stuff that slips through. Detections are great because we can detect potentially suspicious or malicious instances of compromise, and we aren't impacting anybody while we investigate and confirm whether they actually are a compromise. So if false positives, where we accidentally think something is malicious when it isn't, are fine when it comes to detection, because we're not impacting anybody until after somebody has inspected it and analyzed it. The false positives, people often talk about, hey, let's get filtered out as much as possible, but for me the reality is they're a necessary evil. If you're not getting enough false positives, you're not monitoring enough. Unfortunately, that has to be an indicator that you are monitoring correctly. But obviously, if it becomes too much and you drown in it, boy who cries wolf, you're not going to get any value. So really, tools that can make the right detections have to have visibility into all the right detections, all the right detection telemetry that they need to make decisions on. So if you're in cloud, we need to be able to pull all the data from the cloud, what's running in the cloud, but also the cloud tenancy itself, how you've configured that. That's very different to how we used to secure data centers. Data centers just secure what's in there. You might have some legacy technologies, just as you're able to monitor and pull the information you need from that. You need to monitor not only logs, but also network traffic. So logs are great, but they don't tell all the story. It's kind of like a machine writing its own little diary of what happened to it, but it neglects to tell you about certain things. Network traffic is a lot more honest. It's things flying across the wire. You're talking, listening to different conversations between machines. I need both of those things to make the right decision. And I also need other telemetry, like file integrity monitoring. How has your files changed? I think EDR and can pull existing, can make its own telemetry as well and make observations on things like processes that are running, things like fileless attacks, and how attackers are trying to favor using things like PowerShell that IT admins normally use, but trying to use them maliciously. I also need to look at identity, where your Active Directory or IAM if you're in AWS. Really, really important. You've probably heard the phrase identity is the new perimeter, and it's been proven true with hybrid working with cloud and whatever. But we don't always, it's very difficult to actually perform detection as an identity because it's hard to tell what people should and shouldn't be doing. But when I get an alert elsewhere, I want to correlate with what the user account has been doing. Because if a user account is compromised, I might isolate a host, but they could be moving elsewhere into the organization. So what I need is a tool that looks at all of that. And there are two kind of tools that are best for threat detection and response. There's SIEM and XDR. There's some debate over those terms that I'm not going to get into. There's a bit of confusion. Sometimes XDR is better, some people think SIEM are better. Good XDR and good SIEM are both fantastic. They both can be great. What you want to watch out is for bad versions of each. I think that's why there's confusion. But if you have a SIEM or XDR tool that is able to pull all the sources that you need it for, perform deep analytics on actually to make sense of the data that's coming in because it's too much data for a human to go through entirely, and empowers me to make the right decisions as an analyst by showing me the information that's laterally allow me to move into other detection sources and then take automated response actions so I can actually, at a flick of a button, take the containment action I need to buy myself extra time and prevent that attack from spreading. So that's why the tool is so, but I think, yes, XDR is, we at Fortra have just built upon our existing Alert Logic MDR with Fortra XDR, took that platform and identified where there might have been some slight gaps in visibility where we didn't have all of the pieces, particularly around endpoint. For us, we were relying on third-party endpoint integrations, but now we have, with being part of Fortra, they had an EDR solution which we were able to adapt and improve and then put into the Alert Logic side, which together made XDR. And so now we have this tool which has coverage everywhere, deep coverage everywhere, and it gives us all the pieces we need to make the decisions. And this is still a managed service. We aren't moving away from our managed DNA because, yeah, it's one thing having the tool that can do all the things I just described. You can buy an F1 car, but if you can't drive it, if you don't have a pit crew, you don't have all the tools to maintain it, it's going to look nice on your drive, but you're not going anywhere with it. So that's how I often describe people and process that you need to maybe to get you to those outcomes that a tool offers.
Excellent. And while we're still on XDR, I'd like to talk about a little bit about XDR and security integrations. So you talked about this a little, almost the convergence of like MDR, EDR, NDR, and other security data sources into XDR platforms. What do you see as driving this trend? Like, why is this happening?
You probably heard the phrase, we need to break down the silos. And I think that's something that is true everywhere. You break down the silos amongst your different teams in your business that have the same kind of culture, but also break down the silos between your different data sources. I think probably cloud, people are moving into cloud was that initial, hey, things are very different. I don't want one solution for my on-premise and one solution for my cloud. Like I said, identity becoming more and more prominent. So I think what we've seen is how we used to be able to traditionally just secure the data center, rely on what the servers and network was telling us. We now know that the threats are that our attack surface is much broader. They can come from a lot more angles. If you think of I'm a bit of a history buff, and the Roman Empire, how they continually expanded, grabbed more and more territory. Eventually got to a point that they were so large that they were destroyed by loads of different angles because they had such a big attack surface and they couldn't secure it all. What this is trying to do is recognizing that we have really broad attack surface, that there are more vulnerabilities being discovered year on year than there ever have been in the previous years. So we've got more to secure, and what we have is got more vulnerabilities on it. That creates this problem with a huge exposure in the attack surface. So tools like XDR look to wrap all of those pieces together, to not offer point solutions, but maybe even pull in point solutions, third-party security investments you've made, and pull them into a single location so that we can start to make sense of all of the data that all of our different telemetry sources are telling us, and that we can correlate, because attackers are smart, right? They aren't noisy. Well, the rubbish ones are. They're the kind of script kiddies are noisy. They're very obvious. You know when they're there. But good threat actors, nation states, especially advanced persistent threat actors, but not even that level, they go for low and slow techniques. They evade detection. They turn off security controls. They even destroy data that they leave behind so that you can't find their tracks. And they also try and operate, let's do a little bit of compromise here, a little bit of compromise there, because they're not trying to do huge spikes in activity. They're going to make it obvious that something is going on. So when you've got this, you're being attacked from all angles. When the attacker is trying to not be too noisy in any one single location, you need something that can look at everything holistically and then start to connect the dots together, because those individual dots might not look like anything on their own, but when you combine them with three other dots, you've actually got strong fidelity signs that you are currently under an active attack or under an active breach. And I just remind everyone, I talk about breach and compromises quite a lot. That isn't the end game. It's not game over when you compromise a breach. It's game over if you don't do anything about it. You have a lot of opportunity to contain it, disrupt it, remediate, and actually never hit the headlines. Nobody might even know you were compromised. I know so many organizations who never hit the headlines, who at one point it looked quite bad. And actually come out the other side with a much stronger security posture and some real world lessons that you can kind of go and apply. So yeah, the attitude is gone that we should be shameful to say you were compromised. I think we're moving a long way from that. We use words like cyber resiliency now, which isn't just about withstanding attacks, but it's about being able to recover quickly from attacks. And that is where security professionals' heads have been for a while. And I think that things like I'm seeing compliance legislation, I'm even seeing governments and things like the EU start to mandate quick recovery as part of it, recognizing that compromise does happen and it's okay to be compromised. It's not okay to have a plan of how to deal with it.
A follow-up question, and how these solutions work. How can artificial intelligence and machine learning techniques aid in these solutions and protecting businesses from these attacks, or helping with the identification of these infiltrations and breaches?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, AI is very much the buzzword at the moment, and as someone who's in marketing and hates buzzwords, I think sometimes we overstate the capabilities that AI is able to offer. That isn't to say that they don't play a role, but security has been using AI, more accurately machine learning, which is a subset of AI, and really that's all AI is. It's not actually fully artificially intelligent. We haven't had that general AI where it can completely decide its own things. We are looking at narrow models that are trained on certain data and are told to make statistical analysis of things that have happened previously and then take action based on previous results. So that's detections are a huge part of that. If we can, things that might be not so obvious to us and initially, if we can use a machine to kind of say, hey, let's know if there's spikes of activity here. If some basic one, somebody's logging in from a location we've never seen them log in before, that could be cause for investigation. But also more complex anomalies that aren't always worthwhile detections, but worthwhile investigating, because we often don't know what we're going to go and find in those. So it's anomaly detection alongside usual correlations and pieces are really important to make sure you have that. You have as much, you have the best detections possible. I've seen machine learning, supervised machine learning, be kind of deployed to replace some of the functions I used to do as an analyst, and it's very often wrong. It kind of has to feed into people. There's still the need for people to kind of validate what the AI is telling them, but it draws them to something that they should investigate quicker than it would have if it was left people to their own devices. It can also draw us to make our decisions better and quicker by showing us relevant data, pulling stuff that might be linked elsewhere. Anything that could be automated should be automated, and that's really what I see the benefit of AI and machine learning. But also, I think it's interesting if we look at, I've heard some people say defenders aren't using AI well enough because we haven't really seen any huge advances that in the same way we've seen from attackers recently. And I kind of dispute that. I think that's a kind of, that person who says that doesn't fully understand the differences between an attacker's position and a defender's position. Attackers are used to being wrong. They are wrong 99 times out of 100. They only have to get it right once, then they're in, and then they can start to kind of be really surgical and careful with it. So using AI for entry is really effective because you can just let it run amok, try things out. Oh, we got lucky and it managed to get me in. It helped shift out loads of phishing emails, and one of them was successful. Great. Attackers can accept that level of that success rate. As defenders, we have this, I guess, burden of accuracy that is a lot higher. We need to be correct 99 times out of 100. So we can't let AI just do everything for us because it will make mistakes. Automation does run amok. Actually, a lot of business leaders are quite hesitant to adopt too much automation because they've had experiences where it might have knocked everything offline because it thought there was a threat. AI is there to augment and aid the human analysts and human decision makers and make them make better and quicker decisions. We're not at the point, I don't see us being at the point for a long time yet, where we can fully rely on kind of AI as fully automated security roles and solutions.
Well put, and I agree 100%. Thank you. So I want to ask a few questions about cloud security and as it relates to like hybrid multi-cloud environments. So this might be a little higher level, but we have a lot of listeners, IT leaders, some technical IT leads, always looking for advice on how to secure workloads in the cloud. How can organizations, because we talked about MDR, we talked about EDR, XDR, but those are a lot of solutions. From a strategic standpoint, how can organizations implement the right security controls and governance for those cloud workloads?
Yeah, absolutely. So to call just to link XDR and MDR to it, that is mainly about the ongoing monitoring of how things are behaving in your environment. Anyone, I'm sure people are familiar with the shared responsibility model. The clouds will secure the pieces that the hardware and the physical area of the stuff they're using. If using platform as a service, they might take on more responsibilities. But ultimately, how you use things in the cloud is all up to you. And they trust you. You're an adult. They'll let you put the most vulnerable versions up there with loads of holes in it, because that's your decision that you want to go do. So not only is it about monitoring these things, but also tools like XDR and MDR will actually perform vulnerability assessments, configuration checks, look at best practices so you can understand how you should be building your cloud environment. One thing that's great about cloud, and that the reason people shouldn't be scared about cloud is, yes, it's different, but actually it's way easier to enact all of the security best practices. You don't have that same struggle of kind of loads of technical debt that you might have built up in a data center, legacy platforms. Last week I was reading a breach report from the British Library. I don't know if you've heard of that over on in the stateside, but they had a ransomware attack just towards the end of last year, and they're a government organisation or linked to the government, and they hold like the whole electoral roll for the UK and loads of all the text that we have. So they have been very candid with, okay, now we're going to share exactly what happened, and we're going to point to all of our failings. There was nothing groundbreaking in there. It was very common stuff. Things like MFA, they hadn't turned on because they couldn't. The systems were too old. I really commend them for being so candid. I don't think we have enough of that in the cybersecurity world, because everyone can learn lessons and connect business impact to when they didn't do things and decided we'll do it in a couple of years. But interestingly, their cloud environment, which had their HR, their payroll systems on, didn't get compromised at all. That's because they knew the right things to do from a security perspective. They just didn't always have the resources or time to go and do it everywhere. So they did it where it was easiest, and cloud was where it was easiest. And so that's why I'd say if you get a security partner or security resources internally who know what the right things are to do in your cloud environment, how to make sure you only allow the access that is absolutely needed, and you don't get lazy and just allow it everywhere, because that will make things work, yes, but it also makes you unnecessarily exposed. You can enact that really easily. There are cloud native tools, cloud native recommendations that even advise you when you're building stuff sometimes. Hey, are you sure you want to do this? You should do that. So yeah, cloud is a great environment that allows you to shift security further left, take advantage of the latest technology, things like containers, which can allow you to be really modular and agile and fix vulnerabilities sooner, and not kind of rely on, is everything going to break if I have to patch this one piece? But yes, cloud leaders also need to understand that, yes, we want to bake everything left as much as possible. We also need to monitor, because we can't anticipate every single threat, whether it's a 0-day, whether it's a person making a mistake. Humans are involved in building technologies, in using technologies, in defining how they're going to be used. And that leaves risk for you to be compromised. So it's about having that defense in-depth process. Make your attack surface as small as possible by reducing those misconfigurations and vulnerabilities, exposures. Add preventative controls in there where you can. You can get cloud EDR for cloud workload protection platforms. If you can block attack, you should. Web application firewall, really important. That's something else that I work a lot with in Fortra, is the Fortra WAF, web application firewall, because web apps are the most compromised asset. I haven't actually read the latest Verizon DBIR, but I bet it's going to tell me that, again, it's the most compromised asset because it's the most exposed, and it's a real easy avenue into your organization. So having something to protect that, like a WAF, is really important. But then beyond the protection, beyond the kind of mitigation pieces, understand that you need to be monitoring for this in order to be truly resilient. It's not just about withstanding attacks. It's about being prepared to recover from them before it gets to that game over state. Because ransomware, we talked about that earlier, but I don't think I said the timelines. I think on average, it can go from about 24 hours to 5 days as the kind of quick ones, but they can also take a lot longer to kind of progress through there. So a lot of opportunities for defenders to jump in and stop it from progressing, because it's not just one thing they need to be successful at. They need to be successful at a lot of different stages in order to get to that end goal, which means I don't have to be able to catch everything. I just have to catch one before they get to game over, and then I can stop them.
I really like calling cybersecurity staff defenders. That's it's so accurate when you hear about all the threats and all the things that they do. They truly are defending businesses. It sounds cool too.
We've also got the attackers, the cybersecurity professionals who are attackers, who will simulate adversaries to show you exactly where the holes are and vulnerabilities. So that's why I kind of distinguish, because I've been less on that side. But absolutely, that's a great point too. Once you've done all those things I kind of mentioned, test it. Don't let an actual adversary test it. Get somebody either internally or get a managed service provider. Fortune have a few. And we also have Cobalt Strike, which is the best penetration tool out there, undisputed in my opinion. And that will show, is everything that I think I've got going working? Is my managed service provider actually as good as they say they are? Test them, prove them, and prove it out. And then that's what every organization is doing now, right? It's about that journey we talked about at the beginning. In order to keep pushing forward on the journey, you need to constantly be reassessing, even when you think, yeah, we've got everything under control, because you probably haven't. And connecting it to actual real world adversary simulation, actual real world impacts is the best way to show maybe your business, your executives, your business leaders, here's what would happen if we don't continue developing and moving our security forward, because here's what they could have done if they were the bad guys and not a good guy.
Awesome. So just a few more questions before we wrap up today. Maybe more positive spin. So what emerging? Yeah, we talk a lot about scary stuff, but some of the good stuff. What emerging cybersecurity technologies or trends are you most excited about in the future?
I think the main thing that I'm excited about is this kind of breaking down of silos and integrating lots of different technologies or solutions. I think we are on the cusp of seeing there's loads of cybersecurity providers, but in the next 5+ years, we'll see that shrink massively into a few big providers who are able to actually identify some of the best of breed solutions and kind of make them work together, make them talk together, have meaningful integrations, right? I'm not talking about one UI that looks and smells the same. I'm actually talking about pieces that communicate to each other, share intelligence with each other, have a shared platform, unified console. That's very much the journey that Fortra have on and have identified quite a while ago with acquiring the different security companies. And there are a few other companies who are also on this journey who I won't call out by name. But I think that's the big journey for cybersecurity. It's hard to say any kind of point solutions within that. AI has been very exciting from the attacker side, I think. I'm yet to really see the generative AI or the large language modules actually help out defenders beyond making it easier to search data, right? It's basically just a human-like interface for using Google. Hey, tell me about vulnerabilities I have on this host. That's the only real use case I've seen in defense so far. But attack, obviously, there's loads of use cases there. So I do wonder. I look forward to seeing how the AI journey develops, but I don't think defense have got a huge amount of pieces right there at the moment. But if I could just expand your question slightly to the biggest trends that I'm excited about, I'd probably off the back of reading that British Library report, the fact that people are being a lot more forthcoming with what's happened to them during a compromise, sharing lessons learned, right? Not hiding behind lawyers and PR teams and saying there was an issue, we're going to be really tight-lipped and no one's allowed to talk about it, because that doesn't help the next victims. That doesn't help everybody else develop their security. And I've said it a few times, I'll say it again, it's everyone's problem, right? If we try and address this challenge in isolation, even cybersecurity vendors, we all share threat intelligence amongst each other. We aren't holding on to secret source because, hey, we're the only ones who can catch this type of attack. No, we'll announce that we found this way of detecting it and explain how you can do it, because it's the same fight that we're all fighting, and hopefully that trend continues. Even when we do have that future of maybe 5 big security companies, I hope collaboration continues, and I want to see more collaboration amongst organizations as well.
Great answer. All right, final question for you. If you can impart one key piece of wisdom to the cybersecurity professionals listening to this podcast right now, what would it be?
Get everybody involved in cybersecurity, right? It's not just a security team's function. It's anyone with an IT hat on. It's also anyone who uses IT. So it's everybody in your organization. If you have these conversations early, if you make it fun, if you say, hey, if you were to get to, hey, developer, you're building this application. If someone was to steal the data, how would you do it? Ask them that. Can do this tabletop simulated exercise. Make it engaging, because nobody wants to sit down and watch those cybersecurity compliance videos, but actually everybody actually enjoys cybersecurity when it's explained to them, because it is a really interesting. It's almost like it's the future of Sorry, fumble, lost the point there. Might need a little edit. But it creates really interesting conversations, and it also encourages everybody to talk about cybersecurity on a daily basis. You might not realize, but the person who might be able to detect your next cybersecurity compromise might be Deborah in HR. And if you've had that conversation beforehand, when something smells fishy to her, she can go and let you know, and also eliminate this type of shame among cybersecurity, right? As a security analyst, right, you are kind of, I grew up, I was in my professional environment where you were too scared to make a mistake or admit you don't know something. Nonsense. When you don't know something, it's fine. Come up with it and we'll kind of solve that problem. But also, don't pretend that oh yeah, I knew what I was doing. Yeah, I'm fine with security. It's okay to be wrong. It's okay to not know. But if you don't have those conversations, if you are too ashamed to report when you think something is going wrong, that's when these small issues snowball into the big compromises that we see on the news.
Great advice. Well, it's been awesome having you on here, Josh. Really nice hearing from you and connecting with you on these topics. I learned a lot. I'm sure our listeners learned a lot too. We appreciate you being here. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Hope I was able to add some positivity at the end there. Where I was painting a pretty bleak picture of how sophisticated the actors are earlier on.
Absolutely. And it's important to know the trends and know what they're doing in order to be able to properly prevent and also recover from these attacks. So I appreciate your insights and your positivity and all the stuff you taught us. We'd love to have you again in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And for our listeners, thank you for tuning in. Feel free to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast episodes. I'm Matt Pacheco from Cloud Currents, and see you next time. Thank you.